In the heart of a bustling city filled with towering skyscrapers and endless traffic, Marcus Delaney was a name everyone knew. A self-made millionaire by the age of 35, he had built an empire in real estate through sheer determination and ruthless ambition. His office on the top floor of Delaney Tower offered breathtaking views of the city below, but it also symbolized his detachment from the world outside his gilded cage. To most people, Marcus was a man to admire or envy, but few truly understood him. Behind his polished exterior lay a coldness that made relationships difficult, even fleeting ones. Evelyn Harper entered Marcus's life one rainy Monday morning when she walked into his office as his new executive assistant. She was nothing like the other employees who worked for Delaney Enterprises, no flashy clothes or desperate attempts to impress. Instead, Evelyn carried herself with quiet dignity. A single mother raising her 8-year-old son, she wore her responsibilities like armor, determined to provide a better future for her child. Her calm demeanor and sharp mind quickly caught Marcus's attention. Unlike others who trembled under his piercing gaze, Evelyn met his demands without flinching, earning his grudging respect. At first, their interactions were strictly professional. Marcus barked orders. Evelyn executed them flawlessly. But over time, something shifted. Late nights spent working together turned into conversations about their lives, the dreams they once had, the sacrifices they'd made. Marcus learned about Evelyn's struggles as a black woman trying to climb the corporate ladder while fighting prejudice at every turn. In return, Evelyn saw glimpses of vulnerability behind Marcus's steely facade, a loneliness that mirrored her own. Their connection grew stronger, blurring the lines between employer and employee. One evening, after celebrating a major business deal, they shared a moment neither expected, a kiss that changed everything. For Evelyn, it felt like stepping into forbidden territory, yet she couldn't deny the warmth Marcus brought to her otherwise lonely life. For Marcus, it was a rare chance to feel human again, to let someone see past the mask he wore daily. But reality soon came crashing down. When Evelyn discovered she was pregnant, fear gripped her heart. She debated whether to tell Marcus, knowing how fragile their relationship already was. Finally, summoning all her courage, she revealed the truth during a quiet meeting in his office. At first, Marcus froze, his face unreadable. Then anger took over. He accused her of scheming to trap him, of using the baby to extort money or power. Words flew like daggers, cutting deeper than either intended. By the end of the argument, Evelyn stood trembling but resolute. "I don't want anything from you," she said softly, tears streaming down her face. "But your child deserves more than this." With those final words, she walked out of his office and out of his life. Marcus watched her go, his chest tight with emotions he didn't know how to process. Guilt gnawed at him, but pride kept him rooted in place. He convinced himself he'd done the right thing, telling himself he wasn't cut out for fatherhood anyway. Yet deep inside, he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just thrown away something precious. As days turned into weeks, Evelyn disappeared from his world entirely. All that remained was an empty desk in his office, and a silence so heavy it pressed against his conscience. Little did Marcus know, this decision would haunt him far longer than he ever imagined. And 26 years later, it would come knocking on his door in ways he could never predict. Evelyn Harper left Marcus Delaney's office that day with a heavy heart but an unshakable resolve. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she also understood one thing clearly. She didn't need him to raise her child. Her dignity was intact, and her love for the unborn baby growing inside her gave her strength. As weeks turned into months, Evelyn poured all her energy into preparing for the future. She found solace in the small apartment she shared with her son Daniel, who became her anchor during those turbulent times. Life wasn't kind to Evelyn after leaving Delaney Enterprises. Without references or connections, finding stable employment proved challenging. Many companies hesitated to hire a single mother, especially one without glowing recommendations from her previous job. But Evelyn refused to give up. She took on odd jobs, working late nights as a waitress, cleaning offices early in the morning, and even tutoring children in math and English during her rare free hours. Every penny she earned went toward building a better life for her family. Despite the hardships, Evelyn never let bitterness consume her. Instead, she channeled her pain into purpose. When her son, whom she named Elijah, was born, he became the center of her universe. From the moment she held him in her arms, Evelyn vowed to shield him from the harshness of the world. She taught him values like kindness, resilience, and integrity, hoping they would guide him through life's challenges. Though money was tight, their home was filled with laughter, stories, and dreams of a brighter tomorrow. As Elijah grew older, he began to notice the sacrifices his mother made for him. He saw how tired she looked after long days of work, and how frayed her hands were from constant effort. But what struck him most was her unwavering optimism. No matter how hard things got, Evelyn always reminded him, "We may not have much, but we have each other. And that's enough." Those words stayed with Elijah, shaping the person he would become. When Elijah turned 10, curiosity about his father began to creep into his mind. One evening, while helping his mother fold laundry, he finally asked the question that had lingered in his thoughts for years. "Mom, why don't I have a dad like other kids?" Evelyn paused, her hands resting on a neatly folded shirt. She sighed softly, choosing her words carefully. "Your father, well, he wasn't ready to be part of our lives," she explained gently. "But that doesn't mean you're missing anything. You have everything you need right here, with me." Though her voice remained steady, there was a flicker of sadness in her eyes that didn't escape Elijah's notice. He nodded quietly, sensing this was a topic too delicate to push further. Years passed, and Elijah blossomed into a remarkable young man. Despite their modest means, he excelled in school, earning scholarships and accolades that surprised even his teachers. His intelligence, combined with his mother's teachings, set him apart from his peers. By the time he graduated high school, Elijah had secured a full scholarship to a prestigious university, a feat that brought tears of pride to Evelyn's eyes. Yet, even as Elijah prepared to leave for college, questions about his father lingered in the back of his mind. Who was this man who had played such a pivotal role in his existence yet remained a stranger? What kind of person was he? These unanswered questions gnawed at Elijah, fueling a quiet determination to uncover the truth someday. Meanwhile, far away in his luxurious penthouse, Marcus Delaney continued living his life untouched by guilt, or so it seemed. On the surface, he appeared unchanged, still commanding his empire with the same cold efficiency. But beneath his polished exterior, cracks were beginning to show. Sleepless nights plagued him, and fleeting memories of Evelyn haunted his thoughts. He tried to bury these feelings under mountains of work and distractions, but they persisted like shadows he couldn't shake. It wasn't until a routine business meeting 26 years later that Marcus's carefully constructed world began to unravel. As he sat behind his desk reviewing documents, his secretary announced the arrival of an unexpected visitor. The name sent a jolt through him: Elijah Harper. Marcus stared at the closed door, his pulse quickening. Who was this man, and why did his presence feel so unsettling? For the first time in decades, Marcus felt a pang of fear, not for his wealth or power, but for the secrets he'd buried long ago. And as the door creaked open, revealing the face of someone who looked eerily familiar, Marcus realized the past had finally caught up with him. The moment Elijah Harper stepped into Marcus Delaney's office, time seemed to stand still. Marcus sat frozen behind his massive mahogany desk, his sharp eyes scanning the young man who now stood before him. There was something unnervingly familiar about Elijah: his tall stature, the confident way he carried himself, and most strikingly, his piercing gaze that mirrored Marcus's own. It was as if looking into a distorted reflection of his younger self. Elijah, on the other hand, remained calm and composed. Dressed in a crisp suit that spoke of professionalism, he exuded an air of quiet authority. His voice was steady as he introduced himself. "Mr. Delaney, thank you for seeing me. My name is Elijah Harper." Marcus nodded stiffly, though his mind raced with questions. Why did this stranger feel so connected to him? Pushing aside his unease, he gestured for Elijah to sit. "What can I do for you, Mr. Harper?" Marcus asked, his tone clipped yet polite, a mask he wore effortlessly after years of practice. Elijah took a seat, placing a leather folder on the desk in front of him. He opened it slowly, revealing neatly organized documents. "I'm here to discuss a potential business opportunity," he began, his words measured. "My firm specializes in sustainable real estate development, a field I believe aligns well with your company's portfolio." Marcus raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite himself. Sustainable development was indeed a growing trend, and partnering with someone innovative could benefit his empire. But there was something more beneath Elijah's polished exterior, an undercurrent of purpose that Marcus couldn't quite place. As they delved deeper into the conversation, Marcus found himself impressed by Elijah's knowledge and vision. The young man spoke with clarity and passion, outlining strategies that were both ambitious and practical. Yet every time their eyes met, Marcus felt a strange pang of discomfort. It wasn't just admiration stirring within him, it was recognition. Unbeknownst to Marcus, Elijah had spent months preparing for this meeting. After graduating at the top of his class, Elijah founded a company dedicated to environmentally friendly architecture, a field inspired by his mother's teachings about leaving the world better than they found it. But this meeting wasn't solely about business, it was personal. For years, Elijah had pieced together fragments of information about his father, eventually discovering Marcus's identity. Now, standing face to face with the man who had once abandoned his mother, Elijah felt a mix of emotions: anger, curiosity, and perhaps even a sliver of hope. After nearly an hour of discussion, Marcus leaned back in his chair, studying Elijah intently. "You're impressive, Mr. Harper," he admitted grudgingly. "But why come directly to me? Surely you've approached others in the industry." Elijah smiled faintly, choosing his next words carefully. "Because your reputation precedes you, Mr. Delaney. You're known for taking risks and valuing innovation. Plus..." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "There's something uniquely compelling about meeting someone who shares a piece of your legacy." Marcus stiffened, his jaw tightening. "Legacy?" he echoed, his voice laced with suspicion. "What exactly are you implying?" Elijah didn't flinch. Instead, he reached into his folder and pulled out a faded photograph. Sliding it across the desk, he watched as Marcus picked it up hesitantly. The image showed Evelyn holding a newborn baby, her smile radiant despite the weariness etched on her face. In the background, barely visible, was a building Marcus recognized instantly: Delaney Tower. "This is my mother," Elijah said softly. "And the child she's holding is me." For a moment, Marcus couldn't breathe. The room seemed to shrink around him as memories he'd buried long ago resurfaced with brutal clarity. Evelyn's face stared back at him from the photograph, stirring emotions he thought he'd locked away forever: anger, guilt, regret. They all collided inside him like a storm. "You look like her," Marcus murmured finally, his voice hoarse. "And you look like me." Elijah nodded, his expression unreadable. "Yes. And now that we've established that, I think it's time we talked, not just about business, but about the choices that led us here." Marcus gripped the edge of his desk, his knuckles white. He wanted to deny it, to push this revelation away, but the truth was undeniable. This young man sitting across from him was his son, a living reminder of the life he'd discarded decades ago. As silence stretched between them, Marcus realized this encounter would change everything. Whether for better or worse, only time would tell. The air in Marcus Delaney's office grew heavy as silence settled between the two men. Elijah sat calmly, his hands folded on his lap, while Marcus struggled to process the revelation that had just been thrust upon him. For years he had convinced himself that the decisions he made were justified, that cutting ties with Evelyn was necessary for his career and reputation. But now, staring at the son he never knew existed, those justifications crumbled like sandcastles against a tide. Finally, Marcus broke the silence. "Why are you here?" His voice was low, almost a whisper, yet it carried an edge of defensiveness. He avoided meeting Elijah's eyes, instead focusing on the photograph still clutched in his hand. Elijah leaned forward slightly, his tone steady but firm. "I didn't come here seeking revenge or apologies," he said. "I came because I wanted answers. Growing up without a father leaves questions only you can answer." Marcus flinched at the word father. It felt foreign, heavy, almost suffocating. He had spent decades building walls around his emotions, ensuring nothing could penetrate them. Yet here was Elijah, dismantling those barriers one sentence at a time. "What do you want to know?" Marcus asked gruffly, his voice tinged with reluctance. He wasn't ready for this conversation, but he also knew there was no escaping it. Elijah took a deep breath before responding. "Why did you push my mother away? Was it fear? Pride? Or was it easier to pretend we didn't exist?" The question hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. Memories flooded back. The argument in his office, Evelyn's tear-streaked face, the harsh words he'd hurled at her in anger. He remembered the way she stood tall, despite his accusations, refusing to beg or plead. At the time, he told himself she was manipulating him, using the pregnancy to trap him. But deep down, even then, he suspected the truth. He was scared. Scared of responsibility, scared of vulnerability, scared of becoming someone softer than the man he believed he needed to be. "I thought I was protecting myself," Marcus admitted quietly, his gaze fixed on the desk. "Your mother, she deserved better than what I could offer. I wasn't ready to be a father or a husband, so I chose the path I knew best, walking away." Elijah studied him carefully, searching for any sign of insincerity. What he saw was a man weighed down by regret, a stark contrast to the confident tycoon who had greeted him earlier. Still, he couldn't let go of the bitterness that had simmered inside him for so long. "And what about me?" Elijah asked, his voice softening slightly. "Did you ever wonder about the life you left behind, about the child you abandoned?" Marcus closed his eyes, guilt pressing down on him like a physical weight. "Of course I wondered," he confessed. "But I told myself it was better this way. That your mother would raise you without needing someone like me in the picture. I thought I was doing the right thing for all of us." Elijah shook his head slowly, disbelief etched on his face. "You don't get to decide what's right for someone else's life," he said, "not when it costs them everything." The word stung, but Marcus didn't argue. He knew Elijah was right. All these years he had hidden behind excuses, convincing himself that distance equaled protection. Now, faced with the reality of his choices, he realized how hollow those excuses truly were. As the tension eased slightly, Elijah changed the subject, steering the conversation toward practical matters. "Look, I didn't come here to ruin your life or demand anything from you," he said. "But if we're going to work together professionally, we need to address this first. Otherwise, it'll always be a barrier between us." Marcus nodded, though his mind was racing. Working with Elijah meant opening doors he had kept firmly shut for decades. It meant confronting not just his past mistakes, but also the possibility of redemption, a concept he wasn't sure he deserved. "All right," Marcus said finally, his voice steadier now. "Let's start over. As colleagues. And maybe, eventually, as something more." Elijah offered a faint smile, though his eyes remained guarded. "One step at a time," he replied. For the first time in years, Marcus felt a flicker of hope, a fragile, uncertain light in the darkness of his regrets. Whether it would grow stronger or fade entirely depended on the choices he made next. Over the next few weeks, Marcus and Elijah began navigating their complicated relationship with cautious steps. Their initial meetings were strictly professional, focusing on the sustainable real estate project Elijah had proposed. Yet beneath the surface of business discussions lay an unspoken tension, a mix of curiosity, mistrust, and a tentative desire to understand one another. Marcus found himself observing Elijah closely, noticing small details that reminded him of Evelyn, the way Elijah tilted his head when deep in thought, the quiet determination in his voice, and even the occasional soft smile, all echoed the woman Marcus had once known. These similarities stirred emotions he had long suppressed, forcing him to confront not only his past mistakes but also the void they had left in his life. For Elijah, working alongside Marcus was both challenging and revealing. He saw glimpses of the man his mother had described, a driven, intelligent individual capable of great things, but he also witnessed the cold detachment Marcus used to shield himself from vulnerability. Despite this, Elijah couldn't deny the flicker of respect growing within him. His father might have been absent, but he wasn't entirely irredeemable. One evening, after a particularly productive meeting, Marcus invited Elijah to join him for dinner at a nearby restaurant. It was a bold move, one that surprised them both. Elijah hesitated before accepting, unsure if he was ready to share a meal with the man who had shaped so much of his life without ever knowing it. The restaurant was elegant yet understated, its dim lighting creating an atmosphere conducive to conversation. As they sat across from each other, Marcus cleared his throat nervously. "I've been thinking," he began, his tone softer than usual, "about what you said earlier, that I don't get to decide what's best for someone else's life." Elijah nodded, encouraging him to continue. "I realize now how selfish I was," Marcus admitted. "Not just toward your mother, but toward you as well. I took the easy way out because facing my fears seemed impossible. But seeing you here, accomplishing so much, it makes me wish I'd done things differently." Elijah studied him carefully, searching for sincerity in his words. "It's not too late to make amends," he said finally. "But actions speak louder than words. If you truly regret what happened, show me, not just through apologies, but through effort." Marcus nodded, understanding the weight of Elijah's response. "Fair enough," he replied. "Tell me where to start." Their conversation flowed more naturally after that, shifting from painful reflections to lighter topics. They talked about their shared passion for architecture, their differing approaches to problem solving, and even their favorite books. For the first time, Marcus felt a connection with his son, a fragile bond that needed nurturing but held promise. The evening drew to a close. Elijah broached a subject he had been hesitant to bring up. "There's something else I need to tell you," he said, his voice tinged with emotion. "My mother passed away last year." The news hit Marcus like a thunderclap. Evelyn, the woman who had haunted his dreams and memories, was gone. A wave of grief washed over him, compounded by the realization that he would never have the chance to apologize to her or thank her for raising such an extraordinary son. "I'm sorry," Marcus whispered, his voice breaking. "I didn't know." Elijah nodded, his own eyes glistening with tears. "She always spoke highly of you despite everything," he revealed. "She said you had potential. You just needed to find your way." Those words lingered in Marcus's mind long after the dinner ended. That night, alone in his penthouse, he stared out at the city skyline, feeling the weight of missed opportunities and newfound possibilities. For the first time in decades, he allowed himself to dream, not of wealth or power, but of redemption. And perhaps with Elijah's help, he could begin to rebuild what he had lost. In the weeks following their dinner, Marcus Delaney made a conscious effort to bridge the gap between himself and Elijah. He knew he couldn't undo the past, but he was determined to prove that he wanted to be part of his son's life moving forward. It wasn't easy. Decades of emotional detachment had left him ill-equipped for the vulnerability required in building a relationship. Yet every small step brought them closer together. One afternoon, Marcus invited Elijah to visit one of his properties under construction, a sleek high-rise designed with cutting-edge technology. As they walked through the unfinished building, Marcus shared stories about the challenges and triumphs of developing such projects. To his surprise, Elijah listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and offering insights that impressed even Marcus. "You've got a good eye for detail," Marcus remarked as they stood on the rooftop, overlooking the city below. "Your mother would have been proud." Elijah smiled faintly, though there was a hint of sadness in his eyes. "She always believed I could do anything," he said softly. "Even when things were tough, she never let me doubt myself." Marcus nodded, feeling a pang of guilt. Evelyn's unwavering support for Elijah stood in stark contrast to his own absence. Determined to make amends, Marcus decided to take another bold step. "I'd like you to oversee this project," he said suddenly. "It's yours if you want." "It?" Elijah turned to him, startled. "Are you sure? This is your company. We both know how much these projects mean to you." "That's exactly why I'm offering it to you," Marcus replied earnestly. "You're smart, capable, and driven. And more importantly, you bring fresh ideas that align with where the industry is heading. Letting you lead this project isn't just about giving you an opportunity. It's about showing my trust in you, in us." For a moment, Elijah didn't respond. The weight of Marcus's gesture sank in, and he realized this was more than just a professional decision. It was an olive branch, a tangible sign that Marcus was willing to invest in their relationship, not out of obligation, but because he genuinely cared. "I'll do it," Elijah said finally, his voice steady. "But only if we work on it together, side by side." Marcus hesitated before nodding. "Deal." Their collaboration marked a turning point in their relationship. Working together allowed them to see each other not just as father and son, but as partners striving toward a common goal. Marcus learned to appreciate Elijah's innovative approach, while Elijah discovered the depth of his father's expertise. Slowly but surely, the walls between them began to crumble. During one late-night meeting at the construction site, Marcus opened up about something he rarely discussed: his own childhood. He spoke of growing up poor, watching his parents struggle to make ends meet, and how those experiences fueled his relentless pursuit of success. "I thought money would solve everything," he admitted, "but all it did was isolate me further from the people who mattered most." Elijah listened quietly, seeing his father in a new light. For the first time, he understood the pain and fear that had driven Marcus's decisions, even the ones that hurt others. "We all have scars," Elijah said gently. "The question is whether we let them define us or use them to grow." Those words resonated deeply with Marcus. Over time, he began reaching out to old friends and acquaintances he had neglected over the years, slowly rebuilding connections he had abandoned in his quest for wealth. He even started volunteering at a local community center, mentoring young entrepreneurs, an initiative inspired by Elijah's passion for sustainable development. As months passed, their bond strengthened, transforming from tentative steps into something solid and meaningful. One evening, after celebrating the completion of the high-rise project, Marcus handed Elijah a small envelope. Inside was a key to an apartment he had purchased nearby. "It's not much," Marcus said awkwardly, "but I thought you might like having a place closer to work. And closer to me." Elijah looked at the key, then at his father, gratitude swelling in his chest. "Thank you," he said simply. "This means a lot." For Marcus, the gesture symbolized more than just providing convenience. It was a promise to stay present, to be the father Elijah deserved. Though the road ahead wouldn't always be smooth, they were ready to face it together step by step. Years passed, and the bond between Marcus and Elijah grew stronger with each passing day. What had started as a fragile connection born out of confrontation and regret blossomed into a genuine father-son relationship filled with mutual respect and love. The scars of the past didn't disappear entirely, but they became reminders of how far they had come, a testament to forgiveness, growth, and second chances. Elijah's leadership in the sustainable real estate project earned widespread acclaim, positioning him as a rising star in the industry. Under his guidance, Delaney Enterprises adopted eco-friendly practices that set new standards for innovation and responsibility. Investors praised the company's forward-thinking approach, while communities benefited from affordable housing initiatives Elijah championed. For Marcus, watching his son succeed brought a sense of pride he hadn't experienced before, not because Elijah carried his last name, but because he embodied values Marcus himself had only begun to embrace. One crisp autumn morning, Marcus stood on the rooftop of the high-rise Elijah had overseen, gazing at the city skyline. Beside him, Elijah sipped coffee, his expression thoughtful. "Remember the first time we came here?" Elijah asked, breaking the silence. Marcus chuckled softly. "How could I forget? You barely said 2 words to me back then." "And now, look at us," Elijah replied with a grin, "working side by side like it's always been this way." "It hasn't been easy," Marcus admitted, his tone reflective. "But it's worth every moment." Elijah nodded, glancing at his father. "You've changed, you know. Not just in how you run your business, but in how you treat people. Mom would have been proud of you." The mention of Evelyn brought a bittersweet smile to Marcus's face. Though she was no longer there to witness their journey, her influence lingered in both their lives. Her strength, resilience, and unwavering belief in doing what was right had shaped Elijah, and indirectly Marcus as well. Later that evening, Marcus hosted a small gathering at his penthouse to celebrate the success of the project. Friends, colleagues, and even some of Elijah's closest friends attended, filling the space with laughter and warmth. As Marcus raised a glass to toast the occasion, he turned to Elijah, his voice steady but heartfelt. "To my son," he said, his eyes shining with emotion, "who taught me that true wealth isn't measured in dollars or buildings, but in relationships, trust, and the courage to start over. Thank you for giving me a second chance." The room erupted in applause, but Elijah simply smiled, raising his own glass in response. "To us," he said quietly. "So on," Marcus could hear. "And to the future." As the night wore on, Marcus found himself reflecting on the path that had led them here. He thought about the choices he'd made, all the wrong turns and missed opportunities, and how one brave decision had changed everything. By opening himself up to vulnerability, he had discovered a richness in life he never imagined possible. In the months that followed, Marcus continued mentoring young entrepreneurs at the community center, inspired by Elijah's vision of leaving the world better than they found it. Together, they launched a foundation dedicated to supporting underprivileged families, ensuring others wouldn't have to face the struggles Evelyn once endured. Though their journey wasn't without challenges, Marcus and Elijah faced them together as a team. They learned to navigate differences, celebrate victories, and support each other through setbacks. Most importantly, they proved that no matter how fractured a relationship might seem, healing is always possible with patience, effort, and love. Years later, when Elijah introduced Marcus to his fiancée, a kind-hearted woman who shared his passion for sustainability, Marcus felt a swell of gratitude. Watching his son prepare to build a family of his own reminded him of the cycle of life and the power of redemption. As they posed for a photograph together, arms around each other, Marcus realized something profound. The weight of silence he had carried for so long had finally lifted. In its place was a legacy, not of wealth or power, but of connection, purpose, and hope. And for the first time in his life, Marcus Delaney felt truly fulfilled.